that makes you think about our times. And it feels, when you walk out of this film, it's the way that life feels a lot of the time in Los Angeles with the war, and it's where pornography meets celebrity meets politics. So
it's an epic about the whole world and the different forces fighting for control of it, but in an unrational style. It's in the style of a dream or surrealist painting or something of that nature.
These are the sordid tales of how it all came crashing down.
The journey into breaking down Southland Tales is a challenging one, but the response I got from Chapter 1 has motivated me to keep this going and to get these out as soon as possible, so I can't thank you guys enough for engaging with it. Let's continue to journey down the road less traveled. Something a lot of Southland Tales fans aren't aware of is that the story was originally 9 parts instead of 6. This would include 6 100-page graphic novels, and the final 3 parts would be the film. Fortunately, this plan was scrapped, and they went along with what we have, which is 3 graphic novels and the film. As to what was cut, Richard Kelly has never really said. Kelly has expressed interest in adapting the graphic novels into a live-action film, but I highly doubt we will ever see it, considering The Rock is a huge action star, and I don't think he would be interested in returning to Southland Tales, as well as some of the other characters, including Justin Timberlake. As for an animated series or a motion comic, it's unlikely, but I think it's the most possible and the better option. Issue 2 of Southland Tales is titled Fingerprints, and that is a reference to the way the United States runs in this universe. We've already learned that in order to vote or take money out of your bank account, and I'm sure there's many other things, you have to provide your fingerprint. Fingerprints was released on September 16th, 2006, and was written by Richard Kelly and also illustrated by Brett Welderly. Right off the bat, we are told that there is no alternative to fluid karma. I kind of get the vibe that this will be the propaganda that goes on in the Southland Tales universe, so I think it's a great touch. So at the start of Chapter 2, we're introduced to Ronald Taverner, who is played by Sean William Scott in the film. He also has amnesia. The only thing he remembers is that he is 33 years old and he's from Hermosa Beach, California. His father, Tab Taverner, tells him to come below the deck of the boat, and he shows him that he has a twin brother named Roland Taverner. Roland is tied to a chair. Tab tells him that he kidnapped his own brother for him, and he was going to hide him at the lake. He also assures him that his memory will come back in a few days if he keeps taking the fluid karma injections. Roland Taverner was drafted to World War III, and Tab was able to get him out of it, and got him a job working for urban pacification units. While working there, he discovered that innocent people are being killed and people's private information has been stolen. The government is after him to uncover who is behind this conspiracy. They will give him a truth serum that would be so disastrous to the world if this information comes out. It is now Ronald's job to impersonate his twin brother Roland in an attempt to destroy US Ident. What is US Ident? Well, get ready for an exposition dump. It was created by the Republican Party and is essentially the Patriot Act on steroids. US Ident began keeping extremely close tabs on how people use the internet, and eventually you couldn't log on to the internet without using your thumbprint. Dozens of US Ident facilities popped up, and this was supposed to help the war on terror, but unfortunately some of the people behind US Ident began to sell personal information of civilians, and hackers even got into the system. Liberals began to rebel, and it even got so bad that the Democratic politicians started to distance themselves from these extreme rebellious groups. There were many rebellious groups, but we're told that the most vocal are the neo-Marxists. They claim to be the descendants of Karl Marx's teachings. Their mission is to overthrow capitalism and God, which is exactly what Tab Taverner is trying to get Ronald to do. Tab introduces Ronald to Zora Carmichaels. She is his guide through this mission, so they pack Roland into the back of the truck and get going, but not before Tab tells Ronald to go with God, which goes against the neo-Marxist plan to overthrow him, but he says time will tell. On this car ride, Ronald is very open with the stranger that he just met and tells her that he is constipated. She says that there's this theory that humans will evolve to a point where bowel movements won't be necessary. This will come from an organic diet and meditation. The human body will learn to absorb nutrients and bowel movements will not be necessary. Don't you just love how we go from politics to bowel movements just like that? Zora and Ronald get into a debate about bowel movements, where Ronald thinks it's just a part of life, and Zora thinks it's a result of a bad food supply and a spiritual weakness. Whose side are you on? Let me know in the comments. So it's only after all of this that Ronald finally asks Zora where they're going, and Zora tells him they're heading to Los Angeles. Let's catch up with the protagonists of the first book. We see through the lens of U.S. Ident that Boxer Santoros and Krista now, The Rock and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, are now arriving in Palmdale, California, so they have successfully crossed the border. They're doing research on their script, The Power. They have arrived at the house of one of Krista's high school friends, Tanya McBride. To Boxer's surprise, this is a character from the script. In order for Boxer to meet Tanya, Krista tells him that he has to become Jericho Kane, his character from the script. So The Rock is playing Boxer Santoros, who is playing Jericho Kane. Got it? We learned that Tanya's husband died of an overdose 6 months ago, but is revealed to be a fluid karma overdose. Rick was in the army and did 3 tours in Iraq. He was in a top-secret program but never told Tanya what it was, but she speculates that the military was testing a drug on him. Tanya was 6 months pregnant before Rick even told her he was involved in the experiments. They eventually had a son named Caleb. Tanya says Rick was acting strange before his death, and that he would wander into the desert in the middle of the night claiming he was looking for the Indian chief. This causes Boxer to have flashbacks to his encounter in part 1, and he rushes to the bathroom. In the bathroom, Rick is standing in the mirror. He refers to Boxer as Future Man and asks him,
"Do you bleed?"
So we could just assume that Southland Tales predicted Batman vs. Superman. Boxer wants to know who the Indian chief is, and Rick tells him that he is a natural bleeder named Nevada. From what I'm gathering, bleeders are just people who take fluid karma, or people who are naturally high off of it. Natural bleeders exist in the past and can see the future. Chemical bleeders, or people who do the drugs, see backwards in time. Rick is in the middle ground because if you take too much fluid karma, you start to bleed both ways and can see the past and the future. Rick exists on January 20th, 2008, which is when he died, and Boxer currently exists on July 1st, 2008. This is the first time Rick has seen the future. Rick gets jealous and wonders why Boxer is in his house 6 months into the future and asks if he's sleeping with Tanya. I love the look on Boxer's face when Rick realizes that he's famous actor Boxer Santoros. Then it hits him that he's not here. Boxer has to tell him that he's dead. Rick refuses to believe that he's dead and says that Boxer is lying to him because he's sleeping with his wife. He then injects himself with more fluid karma. So it almost seems like bleeding both ways is kind of a purgatory. Just then Krista and Tanya knock on the bathroom door, and Boxer tells Tanya that he saw how Rick died. Naturally, this causes Tanya to get pissed off and she kicks him out. She also tells him that his movies suck on the way out, which is pretty funny. Boxer is questioning what is happening to him as he passes out. Boxer then begins to dream, and he's in a big, tall maze. He's being chased by a snake, and if the snake gets to him, he will fall into a coma. He sees a portal and jumps through it. It's like a painting from Super Mario 64. When he gets to the other side, he sees Ronald Tavener. Ronald asks him who he is, and Boxer tells him that he is Jericho Kane. And then Ronald Tavener wakes up in the car with Zora. So we jump back to Zora and Ronald. Zora tells Ronald that it is normal for him to pass out and have lapses in short-term memory due to his concussion. Ronald claims to have had the most vivid dream of his life, and Zora tells him to tell her about his dream so she can record it, as she's been ordered to do. He says he's walking through a maze and the walls are made of sand. There's a massive chamber with a light source at the end. There was a liquid membrane in the front of the light, and he describes it as a wall of water. We then go to the Trier Plaza, where Inga von Westphalen is having a meeting with members of her scientific team, Dr. Katrina Kunstler and Dr. Soberin X. Apparently their experiment thus far has been a success because Ronald and Boxer are both traveling south. Dr. X even drools over Krista now for a bit, and tells us that nobody can rock the cock like Krista now. Here's where we learn some seemingly very important stuff. Dr. Katrina Kunstler tells Dr. X that Krista produced an incredible level of amount of accuracy in predicting the future. This is probably why Boxer was instructed to stay with her in part 1. Anyway, under hypnosis and given an injection of fluid karma, Dr. Kunstler read the entire Book of Revelations to Krista. And then she requested that Krista write a document which would forecast the final 3 days on Earth. And Krista wrote it in the form of a screenplay, which is The Power. I still might do a separate episode on the entire screenplay, so let me know if you're interested in that. Anyway, this was inspired by the theory that the Book of Revelations was written by Apostle John while he was high on shrooms. So now, just as religious scholars have debated and tried to decode the Book of Revelations, they must try to find the meaning behind a screenplay written by a porn star on shrooms. Baron von Westphalen is sleeping upstairs with his mistress, Serpentine. We learn about the Trier family. Baron was born in Trier, Germany, and he is a descendant of the wife of philosopher Karl Marx. Inga was an architect for a German defense company called the Trier Corporation, and after the attacks in Texas, the US hired her to design 900-foot mega-zeppelins that would move soldiers into the Middle East. After earning $112 billion in 1 year, they became one of the most wealthy corporations in the world. The world was quickly running out of fuel with no alternative, so Inga named Baron the lead of a top-secret project for an alternative fuel source called fluid karma. They harness energy from the Earth's crust, then a tidal generator called Utopia 1 would broadcast a hydroelectric energy field that would run engines by remote. If you're confused, don't feel bad, because so am I. But it's similar to Wi-Fi, where if you're in the broadcast area, then your vehicle will not need fuel. The Pentagon paid him handsomely to build 2 more Utopia facilities, with the most prominent one being off the coast of Santa Monica. Utopia 3 would be the cure for our sickness. The family takes questions from the media but gives very vague answers. This is actually in the movie, so we'll cover this later. But when they're asked if they're selling the patent to Japan, they immediately stop the press conference. We now learn that Trier has engaged in a new top-secret experiment, Serpentine Dream Theory. They learn via Zora's recordings of Ronald Taverner's dream that him and Boxer have somehow contacted each other in the dream world. They point out that Jericho Kane is the same initials as Jesus Christ, and that Jericho Kane is the character in the script. He is a rugged cop who doesn't play by the rules. We're now introduced to Tina MacArthur, who is the test administrator for Utopia 3. Baron von Westphalen attempts to hit on her and pretty much force himself on her. He lies and says that him and Serpentine have an open relationship, because that excuse always works, and threatens to send Tina back to Iraq if she doesn't cooperate. She turns him down, and right on cue, Serpentine and the others show up asking about the dead body in the Trier vehicle from part 1. Tina is concerned that it was a soldier, but Baron assures her that the body was of a civilian. Since the Trier was stolen and then somehow caught on fire, Tina is concerned that this will cause a setback with the alternative fuel movement. Baron tells her that is why the body has to remain at Utopia 3 until further notice. Ronald and Zora are eating at a fast food restaurant, and Ronald is trying his hardest to make himself shit. After a half hour on the toilet and dealing with some angry civilians, he still can't force anything out. Zora tells him that she knows that her theory of evolution is coming true right in front of her eyes. There's a nice transition here to show the parallel between Ronald and Boxer. Both are dealing with a woman who claims to predict the future of sorts. Krista and Boxer have gotten a hotel room. Krista tells Fortunio that she will take Boxer to the Black Farmhouse, and there he will learn what it takes to become Jericho Kane. At the farmhouse, they're met with a ton of neo-Marxists who have come to see Jericho Kane. Hermosa guides the 3 inside and asks Boxer if he's ready to become Jericho Kane. He's as ready as he'll ever be. They will have 4 so-called artists working on Boxer at the same time, and the needles are clean. This is seemingly where Boxer gets his tattoo of Jesus Christ that he has in the film. Ronald sees a note attached to his brother Roland. It's from his friend Pilot Abilene, who is played by Justin Timberlake. Krista is now at some kind of art exhibit while Boxer gets his tattoos. She runs into Zora, and it seems like they have some unresolved tension. Also, all of the lights here are powered by little mechanical balls. We're introduced to Dion and Dream, who are the leaders of the neo-Marxist underground. They're preaching about how they're going to fulfill the dreams of Nikola Tesla and produce wireless electricity. A woman tells Ronald that she has harnessed the rays and caused them to operate a motive device before she's screamed at to not touch Ronald. Boxer Santoros is revealed to the group as some kind of messiah. Ronald mentions that he recognizes Boxer as Jericho Kane from his dreams, and as we pan out, we see all the lights are lit up in the shape of Boxer's face, so he is being worshipped. As the issue ends, we learn that the search for Boxer Santoros has reached the highest level of security, and his mother-in-law is leading it. She's the wife of Republican candidate Elliot Frost, a former prom queen, and the director of NSA. US Ident was her brainchild, and as part 2 ends, she's knitting the Elliot Frost logo and she pricks her finger, leaving a symbolic bloody fingerprint on the logo. So that was book 2 of Southland Tales, titled Fingerprints. I absolutely love breaking this thing down for you guys and trying to bring some more attention to this lesser-known part of the story. Also, if I missed anything, feel free to point it out. I want this to be like an open discussion instead of just me 100% breaking it down. I want this to be more of an interactive experience. There were some comments and suggestions on Reddit and on the YouTube video last time, and I just love the feedback, and I love having these conversations with you guys. I host a podcast with my brother called Santa Mira After Dark, the town from Invasion of the Body Snatchers and Halloween 3. We would appreciate it if you can give us any type of support. We talk about a new movie every week, and we have a whole lot of fun doing it, so feel free to check that out. And next time, we will be back with more Southland Tales, with the third and final book called The Mechanicals. After we're done with the book, then we will get into the film. But for now, this is how the video ends, not with a whimper, but with a bang.